Welcome back to Introduction to Programming. What we're going to do today is we're going to install the BloodShed DEV C++ compiler, which is an IDE. It's one of the ones that I like to use instead of Visual Studio. I've just gotten very used to the fact of teaching C++ using the BloodShed C++ IDE, just for the sole fact that it doesn't bundle in any other types of languages or frameworks as Visual Studio would do. And I don't want people to get overwhelmed. It's a very simple IDE compiler. It comes with everything that you need for C++. It's available for Windows, and it's also available for the Mac. So let's get started. It's going to be a real quick thing. So you should see the actual link here, okay? And there's a attachment that I'm putting on the lecture so that you can just click on that link. You don't have to write it down or anything, and you can just get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this, copy. I'm going to open up a window of the browser, go over here, and you should see a screen like this. What you're going to do is you're going to go over here and click on download. It's going to take a little bit. It's going to say download will start in 3 seconds, 2, 1, and there you see it going. It's going to take a little bit for it to download, and I'll stay with you guys here so that you're familiar with the process, and I don't really want to stop the video now so that we can go ahead and install. So again, this is also available for Mac OS, but with Mac OS you also have the ability to download something called Code Blocks, which is basically another C++ compiler that you can use. Those of you that want to use Visual Studio, there's really no difference in terms of code examples. You can just port it to Visual Studio, create a Visual Studio project and in C++, and you should be able to run your code in Visual Studio. This is just another type of IDE that you can use. So, it's simple. You don't have to go through the installation of Visual Studio, and I kind of like to run this course with the idea that people that take this course are either real fundamental, they have a little bit of computer background, but they may not have a lot. So I'm not going to have people install a whole package of Visual Studio and go through all that stuff. So this pretty much quickly downloaded. It's about 48 megs, and now I have it down here in my browser. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to double click. So you see that, you just click yes. It's going to unpackage the data. And like I said, if you're familiar with more Visual Studio and you prefer to use Visual Studio because a friend referred it to you and you try to start picking up stuff in Visual Studio, it really doesn't make a difference where you write your code as long as you have a C++ compiler. That's all. So it's going to ask you for a language, so you have choices for different languages. Click English, click OK. Usually just a GNU public license. And click I agree. Have all this, leave it as is. You shouldn't uncheck or check something at all. And click next. And then it's going to ask you where you want to install it. So what I usually do is I install it under the program files x86 dev cpp directory. Okay, but you may want to install it in another directory that you're more familiar with. Okay, so I'm going to cancel that. I'll install it in x86 directory. So the space required is about 346 megs. I have 54 gigabytes available. That's just because I run other courses and other stuff. So I have a lot of applications installed on this computer. So I click on install. Should go through the motions. But I must warn you now, if you have Windows 10 and you're running into a little bit of an issue, please let me know. Just email me, drop me an email and say, hey, I can't get this to install on Windows 10. You should not, because this is the latest link to the actual C++ DevShed C++ compiler, but you may have run into a couple of problems. But again, minimal issues. I've installed this on a Windows 10 machine, but sometimes I've had students tell me, "Oh, I'm getting this error or this error," when I installed on Windows 10. But it all results in the fact that it wasn't the installation; it was something else that was wrong with their program. So, but again, I'm always reachable by email, so you can email me and I can get you through the installation. There's no problem with that. Okay, so now you're going to have that window come up, and we want to run the dev C++, so you click on finish, and it's going to run automatically. I can close out of this. Minimize that. And here you go. You're pretty much all set to go. So one of the first things that we're going to do is actually create a new project and create an example of C++, but I'm going to do that on the next lecture. But at least now you have your dev C++ 5.11, and you can run it now and you can create different programs. Now the other thing I want to mention is, again, if you're not sure where this is located, you can go to the start menu, and then you should see it pop up here in one of your shortcuts. Or again, remember where you installed it. I usually just left it at the default. So you go to C, Program Files x86, and you should see one dev cpp, and you'll see the program here, and then you can always click on application, the application file, to open it up. Okay, thanks for looking at this tutorial. I hope that it was installed successfully. You should be able to install it successfully, and then next tutorial I'll go over how to create your first program, and that's it. After that, I'm going to start doing algorithms. So we're just going to concentrate on creating algorithms, which should be fun. And then later on we'll get into the C++ coding.